Feeling a little raspy this morning.
Yeah, it might be a little loopy. I can't lie to you.
But are you as loopy as Dee is when it comes to politics? Opening with a segue. That's how we're doing it, Sheldon.
Very professional.
How are you doing?
Very professional.
Thank you. Thank you. For once, very professional. How are you doing? And what is your name for the good people?
My name is Sheldon Alexander.
And I'm John Hill, and this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge.
That it is, my friend. And you know what? I thought this was a very, very interesting episode of the challenge because they're just mind games being played everywhere. And I like this part, the strategy part. You know, who's in the game and who's getting played, right? So I found it a very interesting episode. What did you think? Because it was a little bit more slow-paced than we've seen before, right?
Much slower paced, and we're going to talk about that by the time we get to the elimination challenge. Mm-hmm. But literally the first word, or first note I have from this episode is, interesting to see how the American alliances and the British alliances are lining up.
Yes.
Right, like we hadn't really, I guess they'd sort of hinted at it, and by they I mean the producers, the editors of this show, had sort of hinted that as we know, as CT and Turbo explained last week, the Americans are split down the middle, the Brits are split down the middle, both CT and Turbo are sort of stuck between these warring factions, but we'd never had the direct link made, as Tori did for us, that the Cara and Paulie led alliance, they have allies on the British side, and Tori and Jordan's alliance, they have a much smaller group of allies on the British side. But what I also thought was interesting is to see how many people haven't declared what set they're repping.
Yes.
Right?
So I think we should break
Idris,
this down.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should break this down because I was very intrigued by this because it made me really think things through in terms of long-term where the game is going. So we get the split in Paulie and Cara, right? We find out the one side of the house, which, what did Georgia call them? Cara's cult, right?
Yeah.
So Paulie, Cara, Ashley, Cam, and Ninja. And then on the UK side of the house, which is still a part of their alliance though, right? We have Kaylee, Joss, Rogan, Dee, and Esther. Now, as you mentioned, on the Tori and Jordan side, you have Tori, Jordan, Nani, Josh, Zach, and sometimes Leroy, which I thought was funny. And then on the other side, on the UK side, but still a part of the Tori-Jordan alliance, you had Georgia, Theo, and Jenny. And you mentioned that, and hey, great minds think alike or fools seldom differ. Is that how it works?
That's how it goes.
The next thing I wrote down was, wait a second, who's left out here? Because they didn't name everybody. And I was intrigued by that. Idris, CT, Kyle were not brought up, right?
Yeah, but also Esther, Turbo.
Was not brought up, yes.
There's someone else.
No, Esther was brought up. Esther was on the Paulie and Cara side.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Right?
You're right.
So Turbo was not brought up, and
Turbo was not brought up.
Kyle and CT.
Yeah.
And Idris. So yeah. I thought that was interesting, but the reason why this made me think the game through, let's say, is because do these people not realize that this UK versus US thing, this is not going to last for the whole season? Or at least that's my guess. I don't see this lasting the whole way through. So with that in mind, that's what made Dee's whole play, this whole episode, seem off to me. But we can get to that. We can get to that later.
There is a conversation that we see where Paulie goes to touch base with Joss and Rogan. Mm-hmm. And Rogan talks about how, the importance of trimming the fat from the British team. And if they just trim the fat, they'd start winning. Mm-hmm. But, that's a bad plan. That does not... I don't want to say that it's... I see the logic behind it, right?
Yeah.
like there are certainly competitions they're losing in part because of Esther. Really, it was 2-3 episodes ago where they had that swimming competition.
Yeah.
And she was really, really bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he is so horny to get rid of Kyle, and we're going to have to talk about that at length. But they don't, like, they're not really trimming the fat effectively. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
putting in Bear, I don't think is trimming the fat.
No.
Right? Like, don't say that you're trimming the fat when you haven't been trimming the fat, I guess is my point.
And also, hold on. Are we sure that CT, like, where does CT fall in all this? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying CT is by far the worst person on their team, but can you really make an argument that CT is way worse than Kyle? Do you know what I mean? Or Idris? No. Like, I'm just saying it's the same ballpark, and CT's just there off reputation and being the vet at this stage, no?
Yeah. And that he doesn't annoy anyone.
Yes, which is very key.
It's never explained, but the problem with Kyle and Rogan between Kyle and Rogan has nothing to do with their, like, how well they compete.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a personal problem. And I would respect Rogan a lot more if he was just like, I don't like the dude. Like, I don't want to see him win. Like, I would... But this idea that Kyle's a bad competitor, I think, is horseshit.
Yeah.
And I also think that, like, I mean, it's funny that they're having this conversation in front of Idris, who arguably is part of the fat that they trimmed. The other point I wanted to make, though, was that part of the reason why the Brits are losing so consistently is they just don't have as many bodies.
Exactly.
And, like, we really see that in the daily competition this week. But, like, don't focus on, quote-unquote, trimming the fat. Focus on fucking winning and, like, putting an American in versus an American. Like, get rid of some Americans. Take out some heavy-hitting Americans.
Yeah.
And then you stand a chance of winning, right?
No, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. The CT conversation, though, with Kyle, I thought was pretty funny for multiple reasons.
It was hilarious.
Because they're feeling each other out, right? Like, they're doing a little dance here, trying to see which side the other's on. But I love CT just calling out Kyle essentially for being the floater, or just trying to tell him what he wants to hear. What did he say? What was the term he used? Rubbernecking? And Kyle didn't know what that was.
Which, in fairness to Kyle, that's not how I would use the phrase rubbernecking, would you?
I mean, I wouldn't use the term rubbernecking. I can't really say it's part of my vocabulary there, John.
To me, someone that rubbernecks is someone who's, like, gawking, like staring. Like, if you're driving on the highway and there's been a car accident, you know how, like, there's always a traffic jam because people slow down to see what happens?
Yep.
That's rubbernecking.
Interesting.
One thing I thought funny about this conversation was that because of their accents and CT's mumbling, they both required subtitles. And I had an easier time understanding Kyle than I did CT. Like, CT is in full mumble mode.
I will say, as you were just talking, I did Google the dictionary version of rubberneck. And
who's right?
Well, here's the thing. The first thing that comes up says it's a verb, turned one's head to stare at something in a foolish manner. But the Merriam-Webster.com says an overly inquisitive person. I was like, interesting. So I give the win to John. I still give the win to John over CT here. But I would also like to know how many people actually use the term rubbernecking, because I've heard of it, but I can't really say that I use it. But hey,
it's definitely like 1950s slang. Like, I don't think it's in the modern vernacular, but It's something that Grandpa would say.
Fair enough. Fair enough. There's also another word that CT dropped there that we got a tweet at us about another term that CT might have used during that conversation. It wasn't rubbernecking, though. So
No.
I'll take this tweet from Jill Robinson, who wrote in and said, at Shell Alexander and J. Chidley Hill, so after watching tonight's The Challenge 34 episode, which one of you has a worse case of lie-abetes?
First of all, I love the phrase liabilities.
So good. So good.
Like, a lot. I also have to say that, so that was Jill Robinson who tweeted that, and Patrick the engineer,
Okay.
I don't know if they even know each other, but Patrick the engineer liked Jill's question.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the first time we've ever had a like third party like a question from a fan to be like double down and be like, yeah, which one of you? Off the top, I'm going to be using the phrase liabilities in real life with people who do not watch the challenge. Like, it's so good.
Totally true.
It's such a good phrase. I really hope that CT is the originator of it because I love it. Like, this is a better phrase than politicking. Like, liabilities works in real life.
Yeah. And
But-
liabilities is also like a great reality TV term.
Oh, it's so good. But enough dodging the question. Sheldon, which one of us has the worst case of liabilities?
Well, here's
Because I have an answer.
I was going to say, here's the thing. I'm not going to say me because I would like to think that there's no shame in my game. So at this point in my life, there's no shame in my game. So there's no real reason or need or, yeah, that's just me. I mean, I guess by default I would say it's you, but I don't know you to be that person either. So I'm just going to stay on my side and say, I don't think it's me. Is that fair? Is that as diplomatic as possible as I can be?
That's not only is that fair, but I think it's accurate. I think that I would have the worst case of liabilities between the two of us. I think that you are a much straighter shooter than I am. And that I am too talkative for my own good. Whereas you stay your lane and like you know how to be quiet and I don't. I definitely think that I don't think I'm a dishonest person. I just think that I talk so much.
Okay.
That I might from time to time catch myself in where I paint myself into a corner. But I think that you're better at, first of all, just being a straight shooter and be like, nah, I'm not into this. Whereas I'm like, oh, no, like, this is fine.
That's funny.
So
that's funny.
We're in agreement. I don't think I have a terminal case.
Okay.
Like, I don't think Wilford Brimley is going to come to my house and tell me to, improve my diet for liabilities.
Okay.
But I do think that between you and I,
okay,
if we had to compare, I am more liabetic. I'm pre-liabetic.
Maybe we'll do like a Twitter poll or something and let the listeners have a vote. I'd be interested to see how that turns out, just based on our...
I think I know how it's going to go, but that's fine.
Our You Killed It personalities.
I can take the licks.
That's funny. Ninja. Does Ninja suffer from a case of liabilities? I don't know, but...
In this between her and Dee, and I'm like, well,
I don't know.
They both have liabilities, I think, between Ninja and Dee.
I think they're very naive, right? In terms of what this game is. They still haven't really figured that out, right? Or maybe Ninja has more so than Dee, but their conversation about just how weird the game is, because like they're trying to play it out in their minds, right? And they're trying to figure out, and they realize that the one side of the house wants to put up Esther, but Dee says she also realizes that Esther represents a number for her side. So she realizes that it might be in her and her alliance's best interest to keep Esther, but at the same time, she doesn't want to put in Esther because she thinks Esther keeps helping the UK team lose. And that's where I think that that's where I'm thinking the naive part comes in and not understanding how the game works. Am I wrong here?
I mean, you're not wrong, but I would also add that part of the naivete is that at one point Ninja's like, it's just for this week. No, it's not. Like, it's obviously not just a one-time thing. Like, this idea that there's a limited amount of time is nonsense.
Yeah, it's super weird, right? And even going into this challenge, I will say the one thing I didn't realize, and I think Cara or someone summed it up at the very end, like, not only did the US team have more people, but the UK team also had Esther, right? And I didn't really realize kind of how difficult that would make this challenge for the UK team, or how much more difficult that would make it, because just on the numbers alone, that makes the task at hand so much more difficult. No? Do you want to explain the challenge at all? Because it was an interesting challenge.
Okay, I will explain it. It was create expectations. Shout out to the classics.
Yep.
And by classics, I mean Charles Dickens, not classics of the challenge. And basically they have these piles of, they call them crates, but really they are planks that are weighted 25 pounds each with ropes on, like, as handles on the ends. And they have to run back and forth, I think they said it was 100 yards, and create these stacks to get down these relics. They're small trophies hanging from guide wires.
Yeah.
It looked like they were about 12 feet. Oh, man, I just went through puberty. It looked like they were about 12 feet in the air.
Yeah.
So they have to stack up these planks as high as possible, have someone climb up on top, yank them down. They have to yank down 12, and then someone on your team has to carry at least, like, carry all 12 back, essentially, to a table 100 yards away. I have to say, at first, I didn't think this looked that challenging. Like, I was like, what are they at? Like, 25 pounds is not that heavy.
No.
But watching how, like, tired, like, beasts like Zach and Theo and Leroy and CT were, with just sweat dripping off of them, looked brutal. And I think one of the things I underestimated was that if you're holding the handles, the weight is swinging, right?
True.
Which would be like a tremendous, like, that'd be hard on all your joints as you're running. Like, it'd be hard to balance speed with carrying it. And Jordan also made the point that they're, like, we don't see TJ explain this, but they're only allowed to carry two at a time.
Two at a time, yeah.
At the most, which is key. Because when I was watching it at first, before Jordan said that, I'm like, why aren't some of these guys carrying three? Like, if you're carrying three, obviously, like, that adds up over time. Like, if you're a big dude like a Zach or a Leroy or a Theo, like, carry three, this goes by a lot faster. What did you think of the strategy, or was there any strategy?
So I thought this was definitely a harder challenge, right? Like, just in terms of not only your endurance has to be up, but also, there's got to be a lot of communication involved in this. And I feel like the communication for the first time must have been on point for both teams, because we didn't see much of the, like, strategy, right? Like, no one explained, like, okay, you do this, this person's going to climb up, we're going to start building this tower over here while you guys build this one. Like, we didn't really see much of that from either team, which tells me the communication must have just been, like, pretty basic and boring. No, because if it was, the teams, like, arguing, or, Jordan yelling at someone again, we would have seen that. And I think that was the part that I, going into this challenge, was worried about. Like, I thought, okay, the communication is going to be super difficult in this, just in terms of coordinating. Okay, well, how high do you need the tower to be? Okay, when should we start building the second tower beside it, because, Zach can reach the relic. Those were the things that weren't really explained in this whole thing. So it must have been a really smooth communication job done by the US team and the UK team, for that matter, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had some, like, sort of minor questions about how they did things. like off the hop when I was watching it, I was like, oh, the UK team has an advantage in that obviously Theo is the tallest guy on the show by far. Mm-hmm. But I also thought, like, CT is pretty tall. Like, CT's 6'3".
Okay.
And Joss looks pretty tall. Like, he looks like he's over 6 feet.
Josh? Yeah. So Josh got to be over 6 feet, yeah.
Yeah, but Joss as
Joss.
well.
Sorry, yeah.
Like, I thought, like, across the board that the Brits had a big advantage that they had 3 guys who were really tall. Mm-hmm. So I thought they'd maybe be able to save time by, like, I don't know if you were allowed to have, like, 2 towers going at the same time, but certainly, like, as one tower is coming down, another one can go up.
Yeah.
Like, you could have CT on the first tower and then Theo on the second tower. You know, like, you can have sort of overlap in terms of timing. Mm-hmm. And later on, I can mention it now, but in the Tribunal, CT sort of referred to that, where he's like, I thought we did really well, but, like, we probably shouldn't have waited for Theo to always be the guy to climb. And you saw that with the Americans.
Yeah.
Right? With Josh was up and Zach was up and someone else, not Paulie, but it would not be Paulie that they'd be putting up there. But there's another guy that they
someone
were...
else that was up. Jordan was up there.
Jordan, yeah. Who does not strike me as especially tall. But, like, I don't think he's short, but I don't think he's over 6 feet.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, and I mean, I guess you could get down to, like, quibbling about, like, a lot of them are holding the weights by the ropes, which, as I said, would be, I think, hard on your arms because it would swing.
Yeah.
So I was like, why don't you just hold the sides of the planks? And I also wondered about they always put the planks down on flat, and I was wondering if you could maybe gain height faster if you put them on their sides, like on their edges.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting. Like, I also wonder, too, just the way that it was filmed, and obviously, if you're one of the producers, you're probably super happy that it started raining just because it makes it look cooler, right, and more difficult. But they didn't really show much of the bickering at all, but you just saw in the confessionals, like, you saw some people take some shots at each other, right? Kyle took a shot at Rogan, saying he didn't think Rogan was doing anything. Rogan took a shot at Kyle, saying he didn't think Kyle was doing anything. But you couldn't really tell, right? Like, you have no idea who was really doing what in this challenge. And that was a part that was not lackluster, but kind of like, okay, I don't really know what's going on. I'm just trusting and watching the edit to see who wins type of thing, right? There was no, like, breakdown. And by breakdown, I mean Josh seemed very quiet in this episode. Jordan was very quiet. There was no Turbo kicking over the towers, right? Like, it was just a solid business-like performance by the USA team.
I also noted that when the Americans won, there was no fighting, there was no bickering. Like, it was workmanlike. They were just, like, dished out some high fives, and they're like, let's get back. You mentioned the rain, and Jordan tweeted last night, it was literally like it was a scene out of a movie.
Yeah. The scenics, the visuals that it gives you, right? It just looks so much better, makes it look so much more difficult from a straight viewer standpoint. And, yeah, I mean, I can't be mad. I mean, I thought it looked cool. It was a difficult challenge. And the UK team, for their credit, like, they put up a good fight. And yeah. I know Georgia was really upset at the end of it, and Kyle's trying to, like, comfort her. But at the end of the day, when you realize the sheer just numbers side of it, like, that's tough. Jenny brought up the fact, though, that, you know, not only did they have more players, but they have, you know, like, their girls, for example, are more fit than, let's say, Esther and Kaylee are, right? Or even Georgia or whatever, however you want to play it out. But that does matter to an extent, for sure. But I honestly think it's just a pure numbers game. Even if it's just having one extra person that's just walking back and forth, right? That's still a benefit. That's still a person bringing over two of the tiles.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Mona 7, I don't know when we're going to mention Kaylee again, so I'm just going to bring it up now.
Yep.
Mona 7, a longtime listener, DM'd me this morning, and she made the point that didn't we see in one of the trailers Bear making out with Kaylee? But, like, we never saw that scene. And she's right. Like, I do remember seeing that in one of the trailers, one of the, like, next up on the challenge. But we never actually saw Bear and Kaylee make out. Like, we didn't see the scene in which...
Interesting.
Because there was a scene where they made out in the pool, right? Like, there was an awkward sort of...
So do we think that... Are we trying to say we think Bear's coming back? Or is it just one of those shit we should have seen or whatever they call that show?
Shit we should have seen.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Kaylee's been
It's
pretty
hard to
quiet
say
on
shit
this
we should have
episode,
seen.
no?
Yeah, Kaylee's been quiet
season.
in general.
This season, not even this episode. This season, she's kind of been super low-key, super quiet, not involved in any of the drama. Really.
It's funny that there's still, like, obviously we've whittled down the numbers, but there's people that we don't see in confessional for whole episodes.
Yeah.
Like, we don't see Idris in confessional this time out. We don't see... maybe we only see Turbo once.
Yeah.
We don't really see Jenny that often. Nicole lasted like 6 episodes and maybe 5 episodes. And, like, I think she had like 5 confessionals total.
Very true.
Like, there's a lot of people who are just like hanging back. Like, we have CT often, but, like, CT's not involved in the drama. Like, he's sort of like an investigative reporter on the scene.
I like that. That's pretty good.
Right? Like, he's embedded.
Yeah.
But he's not... Yeah, he's not, like, right in there. It's weird. It's interesting that, like, some people are just... I don't want to say not involved, but they're not in there.
Yeah. No, for sure. Someone who was getting involved, though, Ashley. Ashley
Yes.
becomes the speaker for the American
Nice segue,
team that
by the way.
wins. I do what I can. I have my moments. I'm good for one a week, so too bad it's Thursday, right? So Ashley decides she's going to be the speaker, and she picks Paulie and Cara. And Ashley says she picks them because it'll be easy to shift blame because people will just assume that Paulie and Cara, the power couple, they're the ones that made the decision, and she just sort of went along with it. What do you think of Ashley's move here in her selections for the Tribunal?
I love it.
Same.
Like, when she first made that choice, I was like, oh, weak choice. But then when she explained it, I'm like, no, that's a very smart choice. Like, she converted me, and, like, you got to give Ashley credit. She is so good at those, like, subtle little moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, like, you know how they say about, like, the measure of an athlete is if they can make small adjustments?
Ah, okay.
Ashley is the queen of small little adjustments.
Okay.
Like, both in competition and in, like, the politics. Like, she's just, like, she's a subtle, good read of things. She's totally right. Like, they're going to take all the heat, and no matter what happens, she can just be like, oh, no, that was their idea. Like, that's on them.
Yeah.
Like, what a great move. I'm very impressed.
It was a very good move by Ashley, and the reactions were very interesting from the other cast members. First off, we have Zach, who I guess isn't really aware of the split in the house because he says Ashley's neutral, but we've already been told Ashley's on the other side of the house, so I guess Zach just doesn't know it yet. But
that's also a testament to that's exactly Ashley's plan, right?
True. Very true.
Like, she's making herself look like a floater.
Totally true. So Zach says Ashley could be neutral, but she chooses Napoleon and Medusa. What did you think of that chirp from Zach?
The graphics team on this show, like on this episode specifically, put in overtime, eh?
Yeah. Solid job. Solid editing job. Really good job. Bravo to the producers and editors, as always. And I know I say that all the time because, like, obviously I have an appreciation for my brethren behind the scenes. But, yeah, solid job. I laughed at that. And Tori jumps in and says, well, Ashley's a thief, Paulie's a compulsive liar, and Cara doesn't know her head from her ass, so I don't think we can trust them. Tori this season is reminding me why I liked her so much when she first came on the show, because she's just like a very funny person, but also a very good narrator. And so I appreciate her as, going back to the production side, when you're sitting in that chair interviewing people, right, and doing the confessionals, when someone like Tori comes in who's able to deliver lines and able to, just punctuate scenes like that, bravo, slow clap. I appreciated that a lot.
You're being too modest. I want to really emphasize to our listeners that Sheldon has worked on several TV shows, reality TV shows, where he's been he's speaking from a place of authority. He's speaking from experience.
Yeah.
Where he has had to do that sort of confessional interview, where in the final product that people watch on TV, they don't hear Sheldon's voice typically, or they don't see him, but Sheldon has sat in that chair. I just wanted to say, I just wanted to emphasize that, Sheldon.
Well, I guess
that you're an authority on this.
I wouldn't say that, but the one thing I will say is that, we give relationship advice. Maybe this is career advice to our listeners. And I'll say this, you never really know where your career might take you in terms of what things lead to the next. And so I obviously love reality TV. Always have. Cool. I love television and I love sports. That's why I work in sports TV. My job for the longest time was interviewing people, right? I would go and interview athletes. So the one thing, and I started off obviously not doing stuff on camera. So behind the scenes, when you're interviewing people, you have to engage and get them to not answer with yes or no responses, obviously, right? So that changes the way that you formulate and ask questions. And once you do that enough and you kind of understand, and then you realize, I remember having the moments where you realize you're interviewing someone who gets it, right? So the athlete knows what you're trying to get out of them, so they'll give you the answer, or they'll start their answer with, well, the last time I played at New Orleans, blah, 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 right? Knowing that they're giving you part of your question in the answer, because that's how that's going to be edited in. And I remember when that light bulb clicked and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then fast forward to a couple years later when we were working on this show, which was the search for the next Canadian sportscaster. And it was a reality show with a bunch of people applying from across the country and whatever. And my job was now to do this. And I was like, oh my God, this is my worlds colliding. I love sports and I love reality TV. And my job was literally to get people to be like, okay, so what'd you guys do today? And then you just let them talk. And then you steer them in directions that you need, because this person, someone said something about John? Okay. Hey, John, so what's your relationship like with Pete? Knowing that Pete already sewered John, but and that's so fun. So my point to all this is, when I see Tori do that, and I'm like, that's beautiful. I picture the producer sitting in that chair being like, thank you, Tori. That is definitely in. Because I remember being moments where someone would say something, and I'm like, oh, that's so in. And you're trying to keep a poker face on, right? And be like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, makes sense, yeah, totally. But, yes, good to have Tori back is what I meant.
Good to have Tori back. Also, she's just funny. We always talk about how we would want, would we have a drink with this person? Would we hang out with this person? I'd for sure hang out with Tori and Jordan. Both, Jordan on the show seems like he's so, tightly wound that he'd be a drag. But it seems like in real life, he's a pretty cool guy. Mm-hmm. So, I'm a fan of theirs.
And that's also, to sort of wrap up that convo, though, that's sort of, too, why, John, I think you keep seeing the same people in the confessionals. Right? Because you find that, Kaylee's confessionals aren't that good. Or, Tori's just really good. Even Cara and Paulie are really good. And once you keep finding those people that give you what you need, you kind of keep going back to that well, right? And so the other thing, too, is as the season goes along, you know what you need to get. And so you know the people that you go to get that. if that makes sense, right? Like, these people are my narrators. These people are my joke getters. These people are my, and you're patching it together like that.
I have to tell you, as in my line of work as a sports reporter, like, you're aware of who are the good quotes on a sports team and who are the bad quotes.
Oh, hundo.
And you're aware, like, you'll see an athlete have a really good game and, like, the reporters will be all pissed off because they're like, oh man, like, he's a terrible interview.
Yeah. No,
right?
totally.
Because they'll be like, how, like, I'm not going to name names.
No.
I was covering the Toronto Blue Jays earlier this season, and a player hit a grand slam.
Okay.
And none of the regular Blue Jays beat reporters requested him, and so I, like, went to interview him with a colleague of yours from the company you work for.
Okay.
And it was one of the worst interviews I've ever had. And I even said to the Blue Jay at one point, I'm like, hey man, like, you just hit your first career grand slam. That must be exciting. Like, I can't even imagine how it would feel to hit a home run at the major league level, let alone a grand slam. It must have felt good. And, like, he gave me, like, a 5-word answer. Like, could not get this guy excited, could not, like, draw a good answer out of him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, next time I have, like, a choice, I'm not going to interview that guy.
Yes, no, for sure.
Right? And, like, that's exactly what you're saying. Like, the producers know that, like, they can rely on Tori and CT and Smashley when she's, like, in the thick of things. Mm-hmm. Georgia.
Yep, for sure. Bear. Right?
Yeah,
totally.
Bear. Well, and I forget who. Someone tweeted at us, or maybe I saw it on the Challenge fans Facebook group, but someone was complaining about how often Georgia is in confessional. And, like, I didn't reply to the person, but I immediately thought, well, it's because Georgia's good at it. Or, like, or better. Maybe it's a better way of phrasing it is maybe she's better than your Esthers and your Idrises and your Nicoles, right?
Yeah.
So,
no, for sure, I agree with that. So we find out who. Where were we here? We found out who is in the. Who's in the? Sorry, I'm getting weird text messages from someone I don't know who it is at the moment. But anyways, we find out who is in the. Why can't I think of the name? The Tribunal, right?
Yes.
And that crew now has an interesting decision to make. No, because what they want to happen is they want to keep Esther around. But on the flip side, Esther is trying to volunteer to go in.
Yeah.
How?
Well, they want Esther and they want Idris to survive.
Yes. Yeah. And
which is, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, that's an interesting move because I understand why they want that, but you literally can't control that unless you have more people on the UK side, right? To actually control the vote and control the numbers, right? But they're...
And also, it's so obviously against the Brits' best interest. Like, that's such a hard sell.
Yeah.
And, like, I gather everyone liked Esther, but that's such a hard sell to be like, hey, do your best to keep your worst player.
And also their plan was flawed of trying to get Ninja to go convince Dee to do it. Like, here's the thing. You got to remember, this is Dee's second season on the challenge. The whole manipulation game or the Jedi mind tricks that we see happen all the time on this show, it takes a while to learn how to execute those things, right? And Ninja definitely is not there yet. And as we said earlier, Dee doesn't understand the nature of what's going on in this game and the fact that, again, I don't know how many more weeks these teams are going to last, but obviously, especially if the UK team keeps losing, you're not going to have nearly enough numbers on your side anyways to compete, so the teams are going to have to go away.
So, well, I love the sequence of events. So they, like, Ashley and Cara really impress upon Ninja that, like, hey, you got to make this happen, and Dee's the way to do it, because you and Dee are best friends.
Yeah.
And Ninja's like, no problem, I got you guys. And goes to Dee, and they have a conversation, and it's like, you have to protect Idris by all means necessary. And Dee says in confessional, oh, yeah, Rogan's my guy, we're a solid alliance. As soon as I explain it to him, he'll do as I ask. So it then shows Dee bringing it to Rogan, and he's basically like, nah, that ain't it. And, like, much nicer, and he's not dismissive. Like, I feel like they had I don't think he's lying to her. Like, I feel like he had a genuine conversation with her. But the upshot is him being like, nah. And she's like, okay, and kisses him, and that's it. Like, that's where it went.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like, they relied so heavily on Ninja and Dee, who, as you said, they don't understand the politics. And also, I think they really underestimate how much Dee is into Rogan.
Yeah.
And, like, they're not going to be able to convince Dee to convince Rogan of anything, because Dee just wants to keep Rogan happy.
Totally true. Totally true. And Rogan is just so, like, all over the place. I don't know where Rogan's head's at. Like, at one point, he's like, oh, I'll go in, whatever, doesn't matter. I'll go in instead of, like, didn't he say I'll go in instead of putting in Idris? And I was like, how does that make any sense? Like,
yeah,
it's just super odd. I don't know where Rogan's head's at all, but yeah, that whole side of the alliance is weird.
This guy who literally begged to not go in on the last episode.
Yeah, magically now, when he knows he has a number so that he's not going in, probably. You know what I mean? So that's probably why there's a sudden burst of confidence now, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, it's super interesting. And, I mean, again, my biggest thing is I just don't see the twist lasting that long, so I don't know why the UK team is so focused on, you know, who's the worst person on their team when they need to really focus on the bigger game. And, you know, the right play is what Cara and them want. Like, if you're Dee, the right play is for you to vote the other way. But,
yeah,
hey, what can you do? Cara and... No, sorry. So, I also had a question for you. It's Kyle and Idris, are they really the worst players on the UK team? Because
I don't think Kyle is.
Neither do I at all, right? And that's again what Yaman's Rogan was trying to pitch here, which I also found super weird. But Esther volunteered to go in, right? Let's talk about this for a sec. What do you make of that in the sense that normally isn't that frowned upon? Like, or is it because she's not actually quitting, she's just volunteering to go in because she thinks it's her time? How do you rate this?
See, I had a similar question lined up in my notes for you.
Okay.
I was wondering, like, why is she volunteering? Like, she has made it this far strictly because she has gone into elimination before, but she's here now because she's trying to avoid elimination. Mm-hmm. Like, I honestly wondered if there's something going on where, like, she's tired, she's bored, she wants to go home, like, misses her kid. Like, I wonder if there's something, like, behind the scenes like that, because I don't understand in terms of gameplay why she would do that.
Yeah, I think there might be something like that that's very possible. And at first I was kind of like, she's quitting, she's giving up. But the way that she spun it, and also the fact that she made it very clear to the tribunal, she's like, I'll go against anybody. I'll go against Georgia. I'll go against Jenny. Like, I don't fear any of them. Like, she at least made it sound as if, like, she was confident in going against anyone. Now, the flip side of that could also be, oh, well, she wants to go home. So, of course, she'd say she wants to go to against Jenny because Jenny would be able to beat her. I don't know. That's just not the vibe I got from Esther, right? And I mean, I feel like that was right, seeing how it played out and how emotional she was at the end. But I don't know. I will say, under normal circumstances, and hey, TJ's the first one to stand up and call someone out if he sniffs out someone might be quitting, and that never happened, at least that we saw either. So
no,
I was okay with it, which I kind of was. I didn't know if that would be my response, let's say.
Yeah, I don't know. I did find it strange that she volunteered. So we have the tribunal scene, which is probably the most relaxed it's ever been for the British.
I guess so, because Bear's not there yelling.
Yeah, Bear's not there. And also, like, the numbers are now sliding in the Joss and Rogan direction, right? Like, there's just there's fewer people.
Yeah.
Proper grammar there. There's fewer people to, like, stand up to them.
Yeah.
But basically, Esther volunteers. Everyone's like, okay, cool.
And I don't get why Cara and Ashley were so mad. Like, what exactly did you want Dee to do in that moment? Like, you're sitting there and Esther's like, I'm going in. Like, what did you want Dee to do in that moment?
Yeah, in that moment, there's nothing to be said. There's, like, what are you going to be like? I'm going to nominate Jenny. Right? Like, you can't, like, that would just be sticking her neck out for no reason. And then they put up, Rogan calls out Kyle and is like, hey, man, like, I think you're one of the weakest players on the team, which, again, I don't think is true. Joss seconds it, and then they have a vote. And basically, I mean, Kyle argues, but basically, Kyle loses. I think it was 6 votes to 4, and notably, CT did not vote.
See, I was going to ask that. I didn't know if it happened or not, but I was like, I'm pretty sure I don't recall seeing CT vote. But the other thing I want to just touch on here, correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't Rogan said that Idris is the worst player on the team? Didn't he also say that he thought Theo before was the worst guy on the team? Remember, and they got in a huge argument before where he was trying to, when Theo did get put in, and Rogan was arguing with them, saying that, oh, Theo's too cocky and whatever. Like, he just keeps throwing that out instead of just, as you mentioned earlier, just saying, hey, man, I'm putting you in because it's the best for a bye game.
Yeah.
Instead, you're trying to float this, you're the worst player on our team. Come on, man.
Well, CT made the point. He's like, there's some sort of, like, weird secret war happening between Kyle and Rogan, and neither one wants to acknowledge it.
Yeah. It is very weird. Very, very weird.
We don't have an explanation. Like, Kyle seems like he's generally popular in the house, obviously not with Cara and Paulie. Mm-hmm. But, like, people generally enjoy his company. He doesn't seem like he's bad at the competitions.
No.
And it's not a one-way street. Like, Kyle was criticizing how Rogan competed in the most recent competition, and I didn't think Rogan was bad. And I think that's a competition that Rogan's built for. Like, he's strong. I don't know how fast he is. His stamina seems to improve, but, like, he's not a disaster.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you can hang the loss on either one of them.
No, for sure. And I think, Kyle's game, at a certain point when you're floating, it'll get you to a certain point in the game. But at some point in time, you got to show your colors, right? And maybe when Bear was still in the house, that was when Kyle needed to pick a side. And then that would have ensured that he was still in the game. That's what I think anyways, right? But instead, he tried to sit on the fence, and CT has still managed to do that somehow. Idris has still managed to do that somehow. But the reality is, Idris is quiet. CT, for the most part, isn't causing trouble, and he's also a vet. Kyle is loud, and eventually people know, hey, he's going to pick a side, right? Like, it just, the way that Kyle plays the game, it's only going to last for so long. You have to pick a side at a certain point. And, hey, the same thing's going to come down. It's going to happen to CT as well, but we kind of know CT has already picked a side, if we're being honest. Right? Yeah. He's already picked the Josh and Rogan side, no?
Yeah, he pretty much has. And I think it's just because he never fully bought into what Kyle was saying, right? Like,
Exactly.
I mean, he tells Rogan at some point, like, hey, man, just be straight with me.
Yeah.
But I think that part of it is that he feels like he has a better read on Rogan and Joss.
Totally true.
I think he trusts Joss and Rogan as much as he trusts Kyle, which is not at all. But that I think CT feels he can tell when Joss and Rogan are lying.
Yeah. And let's be serious, right? Like, we've seen Kyle manipulate the game. We've seen Kyle go to Paulie and try to egg on the situation that was going on with Paulie and Josh. We've seen Kyle completely just make up a lie to Laurel about Wes and the whole, like, the group that was working with Wes, right? Like, remember that? Like, Kyle has played, I don't want to say a dirty game, but a very sneaky game, right, so far. So it's not like, he's completely innocent in this situation. People have seen these things go down and see him try to play both sides, but also poke fires where he can, right? So
yeah, and I think he's been effective at starting those fires, but I think he has to think in terms of his long-term game, and by that I mean like season to season. I think he's going to have a hard time being successful in future seasons just because he's starting to get a bad rep.
Yeah. No, for sure. The one thing that I did find interesting, though, was, so as we mentioned, Esther is willing to go against anybody. Kyle says he wants Rogan, and he's trying to trick them into thinking that he'll switch to the U.S. side, but really he's trying to avoid going against Theo, right? And you're not tricking Cara, though, and even Ashley to a lesser extent, because they understand the game and know exactly what's going on. They know what Kyle's trying to do, right? Which would be go against Rogan, but they're too smart for that anyways, and kind of see through what Kyle's trying to do. And so Kyle comes back into the house, and he goes right to Joss, and he's not happy. He's right in Joss's face. And do you think Kyle has a reason to be upset with Joss and Rogan?
Well, I don't. Okay. Like, because it all goes back to that conversation between Kyle and CT, where Kyle said, they're not going to say my name and I'm not going to say their name. It's too early in the game for that.
Okay.
So, like, his anger, I gather, stems from his belief that they had sort of a gentleman's agreement that they wouldn't be saying each other's names yet.
Hold on. In the tribunal, he did say to Rogan, you shook my hand. We shook hands. We weren't going to say each other's names. And Rogan says that's not true. And we also didn't see that on camera, so who knows? But that is a thing that Kyle did say. My thing with this...
we saw no proof of that.
No proof at all. And the proof that we have seen is that Kyle has lied before about things that hadn't happened, right? So there's no truth to that. But the thing I will say is, if Kyle... Because he keeps saying, oh, why would you do that? I'm one of your best mates and blah, 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 right? He keeps saying that. And if, in fact, that is true and him and Joss are boys, the one thread that I agree with Kyle here is that if you are boys, you got to give them the heads up. You can't blindside them in the tribunal.
Yeah.
If they are boys. But if they're not, hey, all's fair in love, war in the challenge.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Rogan is feeling good right now. And so he's not even bothered by Kyle talking trash. We head to a restaurant scene where the girls kind of just gang up on Dee, right? And it didn't start off in a bad place, but I think when it just turned into the numbers game and now you have Dee sitting there and it's Cara, Ashley, and I guess Ninja also kind of jumping in on her, that kind of threw her off and she got really super defensive. But again, I kind of agree with Cara. And I know it sounds weird to say, but for Dee, the move was to keep the numbers, because thinking down the line, further down the line, all this game comes down to is numbers, and you just lost one of the numbers for your alliance. You might think that, you're bettering your UK team, but for all we know, at the start of the next challenge, there could be no more UK team. And then what?
Yeah.
And even if there is still a UK team, it doesn't matter, because we've just understood that the numbers are divided amongst the entire house beyond the UK versus the US.
I do think, I agree with sort of the broad thesis that Cara has, that Dee misplayed this. I think part of the problem is that Rogan and Joss and Dee think that they're playing their own game, but they're not really.
Totally true.
I don't want to say that they're doing the straight up bidding of Cara and Paulie, but Cara and Paulie hold way more power.
Totally agree. And Jocelyn, it's true. And the other mistake that Dee makes here, she's like, you guys are ganging up on me and I don't know what you want to do, but you guys do what you want to do. And it's like, if you guys are in an alliance, all they're trying to do is see where your head's at. Right? And that's actually a smart play by Cara again. So who would you put in, Dee? And they just want to see what she's going to say to see where her allegiance is. And Dee makes a mistake, because you should never say this, but she's like, I don't know what you guys want to do, but even if you guys want to put me in, it's like, whoa, you never say that. Why would you put that on the table? That makes zero sense, right? So I thought that was super weird as well. But as mentioned, Dee is just, she's backed into a corner. Then you get Kyle just twisting and stirring the pot, just being really mean, right?
Yeah.
Which I didn't think was cool.
I do think that part of the problem with the situation is that she was ganged up on. And also, I don't know about you, but I don't like it when people bring up personal business when they've been drinking.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say it's dishonest, but there's less integrity. Because, part of me is like, oh, you needed to get drunk to, handle your business with me?
And also, those are the people that are most likely to then blame the alcohol the next day.
Yeah.
Also
there's less authenticity in the conversation if you've been drinking. Nope, if it's true. Over breakfast and you pull Dee aside and you're like, hey, where's your mind at? It also feels like, especially in this circumstance where they're trying to get information from Dee, the fact that she's been drinking, it wouldn't sit well with me. You're like, oh, I see. You were waiting until I had a couple of drinks in me to say what else, to see what I'll say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I get why Dee's back was up. As much as I understand where Cara's coming from, I'd be like, I don't like how you're going to, handling this. There's a nicer way of doing this.
No, I totally agree. We get a more of a little back and forth, but to be honest, I almost blew past the whole Dee and Ninja makeup conversation. One question I did have, did they high five with their feet?
Yes, they did, which I found surprisingly gross.
So did I. I was just like, what the hell was that? I've never seen that before.
I've never thought about high-fiving someone with my foot, but as soon as it happened, as soon as I saw it, I had an immediate an immediate, oh, I don't like that.
Another random question, is that still considered a high five even though it's with your feet, or is the high by the fact that your feet are in the air?
I think it's that it's in the air, because if we did a low five with our hands,
it's a low
it'd
five.
just be to the side, right?
Okay, fair enough.
It's a fair question, though. I don't know if there should be a different nomenclature or what. If the fact that it's feet changes it up at all.
Okay. Let's go to a proving ground, though. Yeah?
Yes.
So...
sorry, I did have one thought on just the Ninja and Dee conversation.
Okay.
It's a classic example of people who are well-adjusted in real life not doing well in the challenge because they're well-adjusted in real life.
That's a good point.
Right? That was a very... two friends having a disagreement, that was a very mature, respectful conversation.
Yep. It's fair.
Right? But then, those rules don't apply in the real world. Or those rules don't apply in the challenge.
That's so funny because I'm like, I was so bored by that conversation. Why are these people acting like mature adults?
Exactly. But to the proving ground.
Yes.
I just had to note off the top about the proving ground.
Okay.
I noticed when watching this that there was half an hour left as they did the march into the proving ground.
I noticed that as well.
And I was like, oh, I was excited. And also, when at the start of the season, when it was announced that episodes would be 90 minutes long, I was really worried. I was like, oh, does this mean 30 more minutes per episode of Cara, Paulie, Kyle drama?
Yeah.
I was really worried with what that extra half hour was going to be.
For sure.
But these 90-minute episodes, they're not bad. They're not bothering me.
No, hasn't bothered me yet. And we're what? This is the 8th episode, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And hasn't bothered me yet.
A half-hour elimination, I mean, granted, it's a double elimination, but, I was entertained. At no point was I wrap it up, guys.
Nope, agree. Totally agree.
I don't know if they looked at the material that they'd shot and they're like, yeah, we can do this. Or they're just up to the challenge in terms of editing. No pun intended. But I like it.
Yeah, no, totally. So we knew Esther was going in, and I give Kyle credit for making the joke. TJ always asks, so who's going to represent, or who did you guys elect to go in? And Kyle's like, we decided to put in Rogan, which they obviously didn't. And I thought that was just funny. And so obviously we know Kyle's going in. And so Ashley says, hey, we decide to take big shots. And they decide to put in Georgia. And Georgia's going in against Esther. And then we have Theo going in against Kyle. Did you think that Esther stood a chance in this challenge, which I guess I can explain what it is? It was running riot. And basically you had you had 2 rows of numbers, and each number represented a piece of a relic or a different sized relic.
Yep.
And you had to basically run back and forth and grab a bunch of the relics that all weighed different weights, up to 100 pounds, did I hear someone say?
Yep.
And you had to bring these things back. There were 25 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And you had to put them into order, the same order that represented the numerical order on the board. And the one thing I thought, I knew Esther just mentality. She was going to give it all that she had. And the only chance she had was if Georgia messed up. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I will say, Esther did way better than I thought. Esther did way better than I think Esther thought. And she did way better than TJ thought and that all the other competitors thought. No, Esther put up a fight.
Yeah. Esther was right in there. So Georgia said, and I thought Georgia had a smart strategy. She said, what I'm going to do is, because they have to put these relics in an order based off of their weight, her strategy was, I'm going to go get the heaviest one first while I have the energy, and then just put things rearrange them once they're all there.
Yeah.
Whereas Esther was going and putting them in order.
Yes.
And it looked like it had backfired because Esther was just 2 or 3 relics behind.
Yeah.
And Georgia was struggling to figure out what the proper order should be.
Yeah, at the end, when Georgia has all 25 of her relics there, Esther is 2 behind. And so Georgia gets a check, and it's incorrect. And so at that point, Esther has a chance, right? She dropped her last one, and she's on her way back, and Georgia's trying to figure it out. And someone points out, I forget who it was, but they said, when you're in that moment, you're in that elimination round, and something can seem so easy, but your brain is just going in all these different directions because you're exhausted. And so for a split second, I was like, hold on, could Esther actually come back and win this? But the reality is Esther is just as tired too. if not more tired, as she was trying to get her last 2 relics in place. And, it just wasn't enough. Georgia ends up winning, but everyone seemed to be so proud of Esther, the job that Esther did. I thought that was really cool. Yeah. I thought that was a cool moment.
I thought it was a cool moment too. And I just want to say about Esther, for a woman who allegedly, she's the one who had not been to the gym in like 12 years, right?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see if they want her back, if she decides to come back. Like, if she trained up a little, like, how would she do?
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. But, sorry, go on.
And the other thing I'll say for her is just doing these challenges and these competitions, that would be like a boot camp. Like, if you think about the daily competition, like the team competition they did earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of those laps she did carrying like 50 pounds of weights, but that's probably the most she's worked out.
Yeah.
In a long time. And I'm not saying that to be shitty. Like, by her own admission, she doesn't work out. But, like, if you're doing that, like, every 3 days, if you're doing, like, the swimming competition that she did, it's, like, you're going to get into shape whether you like it or not. Like, that's so intensive that it's going to make a difference in your life. And, like, I'm curious to see what happens next with Esther. Even if she doesn't come back on the show, it'll be interesting for her, like, how this, like, the 2 weeks or whatever that she was there having to do these near daily workouts and like working out with Jenny and stuff, like how she might maybe come around on working out. Like, I'm curious to see how it affects her life.
And the one thing you got to say about Esther, and maybe this is just a throwback because for people who have been watching the challenge for a really long time, we all know that the challenge used to be more regular people, for lack of a better term, right? Like, now we have all these people who are like gym all-stars and like CrossFit all-stars and people who are in super fantastic shape. Now, I'm not saying that that's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying that, it was different. Like, there was more of like a normal Joe or Jill type mentality to how the challenge used to be, right? Yep. And so it was cool to kind of see this story of this person who clearly is not in the same like workout class as the majority of the people in this house. Heck, there's someone nicknamed Ninja in the house, right? Yeah. But at the same time, you never seen Esther quit. She still tried at everything. She tried and gave her best at everything. And for the most part, her team was supportive of her during these challenges, right? Like, it could have gone a completely different way. No, but I think that's a testament to her, and like, she was a good person. And for the most part, people liked her in the house, despite the fact that she might have been a detriment to her team.
Well, and she's not a whiner. Like, you never see her be like, "Oh, this is too hard." Like, you don't see her giving up or anything. Like, she definitely has a lot of heart.
Yeah. No, I thought that
someone
was cool.
Though, I want to get into the detail of Georgia's strategy because our man's Kyle should have paid attention.
Correct. He
right?
did not pay attention at all. In fact, he tried to do the complete opposite.
Yeah, Kyle's strategy was, the exact opposite. He tried to go with speed and took all the lighter ones first.
Yeah, his plan was to try to get out on a lead on Theo because he thought, if I'm just faster than Theo, maybe that'll win because this is an endurance challenge and I have no chance in beating Theo in endurance, so maybe I can beat him with speed. And I guess on paper that kind of makes sense. Maybe there's a world where that makes sense in theory. But that also means that you would need to actually get out to a bigger lead on Theo, which he didn't. He was only 1 relic ahead. And it would also mean that you would have to have enough stamina to lift the heaviest shit at the very end, when obviously you're tired. And yeah, that didn't really work out for Kyle. But also the fact that Theo, doing the opposite, or doing what you said, Georgia's strategy, by the time he's tired, he only had the lighter ones left. And yeah.
I thought Georgia's strategy was really good. The one like tweak I would have made to Georgia's strategy is put them down roughly in order. Like, as you arrive at the finish line,
Yeah.
like, refer to the sign and put it close, if not exactly where it should be. Like, be organized about where you put it so that there's no doubt. But, like, Kyle should have been doing the same thing.
No, for
And
sure.
also, I don't understand why Kyle didn't roll the 100-pound one.
I think his body was just spent. Like, I honestly just think he was
maybe.
super tired. And that's what kind of, I don't want to say made me mad, but it was kind of just like, you guys are such jerks in terms of Paulie and Cara laughing at Kyle. Like, that's a hard challenge, right? Like, that's not easy. And watching it, I was just thinking, you know, how would you guys do in this? Like, I feel like you guys would even struggle at this. Like, this is not, like, that, there's no way that looked like it was easy, right? And so to, like, laugh at someone struggling at the end, like, I understand if you're laughing and it's a puzzle challenge, or you're laughing and it's like, I don't know. And maybe that's just me finding a way to hate on Paulie and Cara or, like, bring them down because they're running the house or whatever they are doing in this moment. But that was just my read on that. I thought that was kind of lame.
Yeah, but they're so... I mean, we haven't seen too much of the Cara, Paulie, Kyle, like, feud this season.
True.
But, like, that's who they are, right? Like, they are so bitter. So bitter. Now, there's an important moment after the competitions are done. Theo's won. George's won.
Yep.
And I want your opinion on this. Kyle is immediately in their ear. As he's hugging them, congratulating them, he's saying, switch teams. You have to switch to the United States. You have to switch to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them switch to the U.S.
Okay.
They both stick with the U.K. But what do you think the move was?
If I was Georgia, I would not switch, because if I was either of them, I wouldn't switch, because I think even if Georgia switches, she might find herself at the bottom of the U.S. side of the house, right? Like with the girls, like who, do you know what I mean? Like who's voting for, I don't know. I just see her at the bottom either way. Now, Theo, on the other hand, he might have had a better argument, because even if the U.S. team wins, right, they're probably going to, like, there's other people on the other side they could throw in, right? They could throw in Idris. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas I feel like in the world of Georgia, unless you're talking about getting rid of Dee, which Dee is a number for that side, maybe you're talking about getting rid of Ninja. I don't know. Like, I just think that Georgia would find herself back in regardless. Like, going to the U.S. doesn't improve her chances of avoiding elimination, in my mind. Right? She's still going to be viewed as a UK person, and so they're still going to be trying to get her out. All the girls would still be trying to get her out. Whereas Theo might have a chance of surviving if he switched. But again, I understand why they would stay, and I also think it doesn't matter, because I give this whole scheme 2 weeks max. Also, too, you don't know who's going to be, like, is it a guy or a girl's elimination next week? You have no idea.
Yeah, that's true. You don't know what's going to be. I wonder... See, I take Tori's point, where if you're Theo in Georgia and you switch to the American side, that tips... Like, I guess the thinking would be that the Theo, Georgia, Bear, Kyle was sort of part of it, alliance within the British team, it's lost. Like, every time, like, they have no power within the British team, right?
Yeah.
But if they switch to the American side, they are both part of the Tory-Jordan alliance, which would tip the balance, which is like a more even thing.
But we've already established that, you know, it's basically that game being played right now anyways, right? Like, Theo and Georgia are already on that side of the house, and they already ended up in the elimination.
Yeah, but I mean in terms of, like, on the American team, like, let's say they join the American team, suddenly they're not just the two of them, they're those two, Tori, Jordan, Nani,
Yeah.
Josh.
I don't know.
So suddenly they're on a team, like an alliance of 6, and maybe Leroy and Zach, right? Like, rather than just the 2 of them. Because it's now down to basically the 2 of them versus Joss, Rogan, Dee. Idris and CT can come and go, right? Like, I see the argument.
It's interesting. Very interesting. We'll leave that to the peoples to decide. How about that one?
That's fair. So what was your line of the episode?
So my line of the episode came right at the very end of the episode. And of course I'm saying this because I'm assuming we're going to name this episode You Have You Have Liabilities. I'm assuming that's my guess early. I don't know. I leave the naming conventions of our podcast to the one and only John Chidley Hill. But I'll say this much. My line of the episode came at the very end, and it was more so because of the setup and the delivery, because, what's her name? Esther gives like this like passionate speech about how great of a time she had and how much she loved hanging out with everybody and how it was a great experience for her and she accomplished so many things that she never could have seen herself doing. And it was such a like great moment. Like even TJ's giving her props and like they're cutting to different cast members and she's starting to tear up. You're seeing cast members start to tear up. I had to catch myself sitting on my couch like, whoa, is she almost getting me here? Like, what's happening? This is a moment. And then your man's Kyle just jumps in, which I thought was pretty funny. Kyle just jumps in and he's like, I wish I had tears I could give too, but honestly, I don't like most of you guys. And it was just the delivery was so good. Shouts to Kyle, and it's kind of my like farewell to Kyle as well.
Lie-abetes is definitely my line of the episode.
Hey,
because
it's so good.
It's so good. It's going to change how we talk, like how we speak about the challenge, how we speak to other people. Like it was a life-changing moment. It's a moment that will stand the test of time and be bigger than the show. You know what I mean?
So true. No, that's fair. That's fair.
It's like when Smashley coined the phrase "politicking." Like it was just like it captured the zeitgeist, you know. So
it was a moment in
for
time.
me, it was a moment in time. Well put. So I have to ask Sheldon, who killed it for you this week?
So as much as I would like to say, or I probably should say, it's the duo of Paulie and Cara, because clearly they appear to be having a stranglehold right now on the house in terms of the fact that they've eliminated their enemies. And when you look at Laurel and Johnny Bananas and Kyle, they've taken out all of their enemies and they seem to be in control of the house. As much as I should say them, I'm not going to. I could maybe say Ashley, because I think Ashley did a good job of getting what she wanted, but shifting the focus or the spotlight onto someone else. I probably could say that, but I'm not going to. I am going to give it to Esther, because Esther's leaving, and again, Esther wasn't the best person on this show. Esther was thrown in, she was basically fighting an uphill battle from the very beginning. None of the show probably wasn't, like what the challenge is now, probably isn't meant for Esther. But I appreciated that she didn't quit. I appreciated that she tried. And I obviously like the fact as well that she appeared to strike a chord with most of the people in the house. Like, she appeared to be well liked. And normally, if you're someone that's bringing your team down and people don't like you, they'll make that known. And I just thought it was really cool. In a house where we see most people be jerks, it was cool to see the whole house cheering for her and rooting for her. And, even at the very beginning when the event started and TJ sounds a horn and they start running and Esther started booking it, the look on like Cam, and I forget who Cam's standing beside, but they were like, whoa, Esther really took off. Like, she was here to play. And I'm not about participation medals, really. but I guess in this instance, that's what I'm doing. I don't know, but I just thought it was really cool to see. It was a different kind of vibe from the challenge. It was a positive vibe. It wasn't like, we do a lot of shittiness on this podcast, right? And like big up a lot of that stuff. This was something positive and good. And every once in a while, we need that. So Esther, you killed it.
Yeah, I really like that positivity. And I will note that a lot of people, a lot of the cast members tweeted about how much they loved her attitude. Like Tori shouted out Esther and said, Esther had the perfect attitude, a pleasure to play the game with. So yeah, I like what you're saying. However, you alluded to who I'm going to pick for my MVP. I thought the MVP was easily Smashley.
Okay.
Because you touched on it, she's getting her way, but she's not getting her hands dirty. Mm-hmm. And eventually, when the format changes or whatever, people are going to gun for Cara and Paulie. People are not going to gun for Ashley. Like Zach, who is on the other side of the American alliances, he doesn't even know that Ashley's working against him. Right? Like,
yeah.
To quote a famous movie, the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the world he doesn't exist.
Dun, dun, dun.
Smashley, remember the first or second episode of the season? Ashley said, oh shit, I'm in trouble. I don't have, any of my people here.
Yep.
Right? None of the...
Lavender ladies?
The Lavender ladies, thank you. None of the Lavender ladies are there. None of their, associates on Team Young Buck are there. Mm-hmm. She's out there doing it by herself, and no one's even breathing her name.
It's true,
right? No one's even suggesting that she should go in. And I was earlier in this episode sort of praising how Kyle had done a good job of starting fires that he didn't have to put out. Mm-hmm. Ashley's doing a better job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Ashley, you killed it. And I'm so glad that she is on the show. I'm a big fan of Ashley's. I really like her. And I want to say, I quite like Kyle, and I was sorry to see him eliminated. I think he misplayed things this season.
Yeah.
But I like him. I think he's good TV, and I would hang out with him. I think he's fun. Earlier in the episode, you and I talked about who between us would have liabilities.
Okay.
And I threw up a poll on Twitter, which is going to last for another 22 hours.
Okay.
But I'm going to give you the early results. So I asked, who has a worse case of liabilities, me or Shell Alexander? And we gave 3 options. Option number 1, me. Option number 2, you. Option number 3, you're both pure.
Okay.
And off the hop, we got a reply from Roy Lee's intern. And he says, ain't no liabilities in this podcast. Thank you very much, Roy Lee's intern, reality intern. I appreciate that. He's a big fan of You Killed It. I always appreciate what he has to say. But I've got some bad news for you, Sheldon.
Okay.
83% of the 6 people who voted so far say that we're both pure.
Okay.
But there is one person, one hater out there who thinks that you have liabilities. So far, I have 0 votes.
I don't know, man. I mean, we'll just see. We'll leave it open, and we'll see how things last, and we'll regroup and figure things out next time, I guess. I'm hurt, though. I'm hurt.
That one person that voted for you, Sheldon, did some damage. Where can the people find you on the social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander. Like and follow. Hit me up. Let me know what you think during the week. Whenever it is that you happen to watch the challenge, whether, whatever day of the week, whenever you get caught up on the podcast, let us know at Shell Alexander or on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And of course, tell your friends wherever you found this. Like and subscribe on SoundCloud or on YouTube or on iTunes. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Rate us. I always steal this line from my man Bomani Jones. rate us and give us 5 stars. If you only give us 4, then I'm forced to think you're a hater.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at jchidleyhill. And until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed it.